It says in these movie writing books that every character has an arc. You understand? Like everybody starts out somewheres, and then they do something, something gets done to them, changes their life. That's called their arc. Where's my arc?
Christopher Moltisanti is one of the main characters of The Sopranos. In fact, you could argue he's the secondary protagonist of the series. The young nephew and protege of Tony Soprano, Christopher grows from a wannabe wise guy to a captain in a New Jersey mob over the course of the series. But while he manages to climb the mafia ladder, he's also plagued with problems both internally and externally. He's an addict with a chip on his shoulder who makes a lot of bad decisions. He dreams of being a writer, while at the same time unable to express himself emotionally without violence. He's both supported by and sabotaged by the people closest to him. He's a complicated character, one of the most complicated in all of television, and in this video, we'll explore what exactly was Christopher's problem.
What's your problem?
You got the problem, my friend.
Christopher Moltisanti is introduced in the pilot episode as the young, hot-headed nephew of Tony Soprano. However, he's not actually Tony's direct relative. He's the son of Dickie Moltisanti, who was a mentor and big brother figure to Tony growing up. Thus, Tony, who's about 10 years older than Christopher, tries to fill the same role for him after Dickie died.
His dad, Dickie, was like me to him.
A mentor.
Yeah, but more than that, a friend.
Christopher starts out the series as an associate in Tony's crew. He's considered to be an immature guy, reckless and a little lazy. He wants to be a made man, both for the money and the respect that the role brings. And when he's not given what he wants, especially after he performs his first hit, he grows resentful and feels like he's being passed over and slighted.
By what I did on the Triborough Towers situation alone, I should have been made right then, boom.
At first, he tries to find a different path to success through writing. He wants to become a Hollywood screenwriter and write mob movies. However, the problem is that Christopher is emotionally stunted because of his life as a mobster. When he does try to tap into his feelings about his father's death for an acting role, he ends up violently lashing out, because that's the way he's been taught to deal with his feelings.
Maybe he really reminded you of your father, and that's why you got so into it. And maybe that's why you hit him tonight.
My father?
All those feelings you have about how he died so young.
Oh, fuck that.
Eventually, Christopher is given the choice to either pursue his creative interests or commit to a life as a mobster. He chooses the latter, as it's easier than actually addressing his emotional problems. But even after he's accepted and starts rising up the ranks of the mafia, he still doesn't truly appreciate the opportunity that he's been given.
I'm proposing you to get your button.
I fucking deserve it. Got no spleen, Gene.
It's a very arrogant attitude, and it's even more egregious when you consider just how much Christopher has benefited from his relationship to Tony. At one point, Tony was going to make Christopher the acting boss of the family, passing over more experienced mobsters like Paulie or Silvio simply because they are related.
Those other guys, Sil, Paulie. One thing they're not. They're not my blood.
And not only is Christopher given a high role in the organization much faster than he deserves, he's also spared the consequences of his poor choices. The same choices to get other guys who aren't as lucky to be related to the Sopranos killed.
Well, Tony always loved Christopher like a son. And so do I, Junior. He put up my storm windows for me one year.
So you could say that Christopher's problem was his entitlement and his immaturity, but it's not that simple. Because while Christopher does undoubtedly benefit from his relationship with Tony, he also suffers from it.
In my thoughts, I use the technique of positive visualization. How come I always feel undermined?
Chris does have a point that he's treated badly at times because of his age and his status as the new guy. Even after he's made, Chris is still humiliated by the guys and treated as lesser, forced to strip on command and pay for dinners, despite their supposed oath that they're all equals.
It's tradition. It's like in ancient times, the samurais, they had these pages. Young boys that did their errands, washed their clothes, shit like that. It's a sign of respect.
This is a trend we see on the show of the older generation of guys preying on the younger. Almost all of the young mob guys on the show, like Brendan, Matt and Sean, Jackie Jr., and even Christopher at the end of the series, are killed by the older ones. Now, a lot of that is due to their own poor choices and actions, but I can't help but think that the entire generation is lost due to a lack of leadership. It's not hard to see how guys like Jackie or Christopher were led down the wrong path by mentors that they trusted.
You took this kid under your wing. You schooled him as best you could. Didn't you?
And with Tony and Christopher, the abuse is even more deliberate. While Tony does give Christopher a valuable position in the family, the real reason that he does it is to protect himself from prosecution. He wants Christopher to be his shield and to put himself at risk instead. And to do this, he emotionally manipulates Christopher and makes him feel like he owes him everything.
And over the last couple of months, I started the process of bonding him to me inseparably.
How?
What are we kicking into?
On some level, Tony feels a rivalry with the younger Christopher. He flirts with the idea of stealing Adriana from him, something that deeply damages their relationship. And when he finds out that Christopher is sleeping with the girl that he was also interested in, he's very upset that it was his nephew in particular who got the girl instead of him.
And my fucking turkey neck of a nephew winds up with his dick in there. A guy I gotta see every day.
Thus, he seeks to control Christopher and prevent any attempt at him from escaping his control. When Christopher wants to become a writer, Tony forces him to choose between the family or his dreams. Not because he's scared of what Christopher will write. After all, he later allows him to make a mob movie anyway. It's because he wants Christopher to depend on him alone for his future.
If you are still here, then I'm gonna assume that you got no other desire in the world but to be with me. And your actions will show me that every fucking second of every fucking day.
Christopher knows what Tony is doing as well. After he's shot, he has a vision of himself burning in hell because of the actions he's taken on behalf of his uncle. He knows he's putting his soul in jeopardy just to serve his uncle's needs. But he's so enamored with the idea of being respected by the man he's admired since he was a child, he's willing to do anything to prove his worth.
There was a time in my life when being with the Tony Soprano crew was all I ever dreamed of.
And it's not just manipulation and physical abuse that Tony puts Christopher through. He's also just mean to Christopher as well. Because he's older, Tony used to bully Christopher when they were younger. It's not uncommon for kids to behave this way, but even little stuff like this can leave deep psychological scars that never truly heal.
Should have seen him when I was little. Him and Tony both. How they broke my balls, teased me.
And the bullying didn't stop after they grew up. Even as adults, Tony and the guys are very mean to Christopher. And it goes beyond the usual ball busting that they all do to each other. When Christopher is trying to have a real moment and talk about his daughter, the guys make incredibly offensive jokes about her becoming a stripper. Imagine the response Tony would have if someone made a joke like this about Meadow. But again, because Christopher is seen as lesser, it's okay to make fun of him like this. Now, we should talk about Christopher's addiction. Over the course of the show, Christopher's dependence on drugs grows from weed and coke to eventually heroin. It reaches a critical point where Tony even considers killing him because of the risks of his addiction, though again their blood relationship saves him.
You're my nephew, Christopher. And I love you. And that's the only reason you're alive right now. Or anybody else. Anybody. They would have had their fucking intervention right to the back of their head.
It would be tempting to attribute Christopher's addiction to a coping mechanism that he uses to deal with the trauma in his life. However, it's more so implied that Christopher inherited his condition. His father Dickie was thought to have been a drug addict, though the Many Saints implies that this might have been a misunderstanding. However, Joanna was definitely an alcoholic for most of her life, so Christopher might have gotten it from her.
You don't drink no more?
Clean and sober, 14 months.
Yeah, your mother has that problem.
However, even though Christopher's addiction isn't the result of Tony's actions, he does exacerbate the problem. Though Tony puts Christopher in rehab, he constantly undermines his recovery by making fun of him and shoving temptations in his face.
Sobriety's hard enough work without having to get mocked for it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Why don't you have a fucking drink, will you? Because you're driving everybody crazy with this shit.
Part of this is the fact that Tony can't stand seeing other people succeed in bettering themselves. Tony goes to therapy to try and deal with his problems, but when he sees other people like Janice or Christopher doing so well, it reminds him of how little progress he's made himself. Thus, he undermines them to prove that he's the better person.
Ever since I cleaned up, no matter what he says, Tony don't believe a person can change. And this asshole went to his shrink.
When Tony eventually kills Christopher after he crashes his car while on drugs, he tells everyone and himself that it was because Christopher was endangering his daughter with his addiction. However, in reality, he did it just to get rid of a potential liability before it could hurt him.
This is bullshit.
What?
I haven't been able to tell anybody this, but I'm fucking relieved.
Ultimately, Christopher's problem was Tony. He manipulated him for his own ends, undermined any attempt to try and better himself, and then discarded him when he wasn't useful anymore. It's not to say that Christopher didn't make his own choices or have his own flaws. He could have chosen to walk away, but ultimately, he sold his soul to the devil. And in this case, the devil was the man that he trusted most in this life.
That's the guy, Adriana. My Uncle Tony. The guy I'm going to hell for.
If I were a YouTuber and you were a douchebag, Matt Joyce, Uncle Mike, Sam Cedarland, Celery Man, Cheshire, Brandon Taylor, James Johnson, Wolfgang, and No Name.